The argument from religious experience was brought to us by Richard Swinburne. He's a professor of philosophy at Oxford. He defines religious experience in 5 different categories. You can take a look at those on your screen. The first one would be seeing something like stars, a sunset, and having a sense of the divine. The second category would be seeing a miracle like the resurrection. The third would be an experience that can be described with normal vocabulary like visions or dreams. The fourth, something that is not explainable, a mystical feeling that is not audible or visible. And the fifth experience would be one that there is a feeling like there's somebody in a dark room with you even though you can't see or hear them. Here's the logical form of the argument. 1. Many people from different eras and cultures have claimed experience of the supernatural. 2. In the absence of any reason not to, we should believe they had these experiences. 3. Not all of these experiences can be adequately explained through natural explanations. 4. Therefore, the supernatural exists. So there's 2 key principles in this argument. One is the principle of credulity, which basically states that if it seems like something's present, it probably is. So with the religious experiences, we're going to be arguing that at least at face value, they are as they seem to be. The principle of testimony is basically that the people who are making these claims are in fact genuine, that their testimony is innocent until proven guilty. Objection number 1. The principle of credulity does not apply to religious experiences. Mainly, this objection is that there is no evidence or nothing to check it against, no way to tell if the religious experience is true. Peter Lawson does offer us some criteria in which we could judge religious experiences to be true or false. A. Good consequences, virtue, wisdom, charity, humility, effect on others, sweetness of experience, agreement with the orthodox talk. Basically, what the person is saying about the religious experience could be used to judge. However, it may be replied that there are no external, so you can't touch the religious experience, or non-circular criteria, which would be something like your religious experience being consistent with your religion. Michael Martin would, quote, wish to deny that the principle of credulity operates in ordinary life and science. He thinks, quote, there are more limitations on its use than Swinburne imagines, and they need to be more tightly drawn. His aim here is to restrict the principle so as to reject religious experiences while avoiding skepticism. Yet it's not clear that Michael Martin's claim that, quote, this would not result in skepticism about ordinary objects, unquote, is then justifiable. But how exactly are we supposed to know any of these things without assuming some of our perceptual claims are at least innocent until proven guilty? Not to mention the problems of justifying or interpreting some sounds emitted from a body as testimony? If we construct an argument for the experience of stars in the sky and wish to ask how the belief in stars is justified, we would have to refer back to our sense of sight, the argument becoming viciously circular. The example of a shooting star fares far worse. So any claim that we should be skeptical of religious experience then can also be applied to other experiences, making knowledge of anything impossible. So why do we need the test? And how precise do they need to be? The critics like Martin would seem to demand that the criteria have to be very precise and fully demonstrate in every situation. It seems dubious whether the test of sensory experience can satisfy this demand. This seems quite unreasonable. The truth of the matter is, we can make objective distinctions without having precise criteria. Legal judgment, choice of large-scale scientific theories, judgment of others, personality and motive. Peter Lawson responds, quote, Rowe has simply assumed that reasons drawn from experiences of God cannot themselves reason for thinking that particular experiences of God are delusive, that experiences of God cannot themselves provide a fallible and provisional means for the critique of other such experiences. I see no reason to think that this assumption is true, and good reason to think that, when suitably amended and applied to sensory experience, it is false. Nor do I see the slightest reason why we cannot use knowledge or beliefs about God, not gleaned from experiences of God, to identify and dismiss particular experiences of God as non-veridical. Think about everything you know about science. Have you ever tested or experienced it yourself? Or do you simply believe what you have been told by experts? Historical knowledge of past events can only be known to you through testimonial knowledge, since you weren't around when they happened. Geographical knowledge is the same way. Objection number 2. Religious experience is a psychological projection. Perhaps we feel better knowing that there is a God out there, so we have some kind of cosmic father watching over us all. Same could be said here for atheists. Maybe they feel better knowing there isn't a father out there watching over them. But it's not really an argument at all. Saying that religious experiences are psychological projections presupposes that religious experiences aren't genuine. It's also a form of the genetic fallacy. Showing how a belief came to be doesn't say anything to whether it is true or not. Anyways, we only look for psychological explanations for experiences that we think aren't real. If you really think you see all that food in the fridge, you aren't going to go back and look for an explanation, like it's a psychological reaction caused from not getting enough food as a child. No, you don't need a psychological explanation because the reason you see the food is because the food. Objection number 3. Religious experiences are just in your brain. The fact that epileptics may have religious experiences during seizures is often used as an example, but this argument is in reference to healthy individuals. Proponents of this neurological objection to genuine religious experience often mention that we can see certain brain activity while people are meditating or having religious experience. They use this as evidence that religious experiences are, quote, just in the brain. But that doesn't really follow at all, does it? Because we also witness certain brain activity when we see things, or memorize things, or play chess, or whatever. Suppose we could locate the area in the brain where the religious experiences happen and we could remove it. Without damaging any other part of the person, they would go about their lives never again having a religious experience. Would this mean that their experiences were false? Certainly not. Consider that we remove their sight instead. Would that mean that sight is therefore illusory? Of course not. Those wishing to discount religious experiences through neurology often cite surgeries and experiments in which certain neurons were artificially shocked and the person thought differently about ethical questions or even had a religious experience. But even the slightest things, such as missing a meal, change your perception of things. How much more would electric shocks and drugs cause? Besides the fact that the ability to make counterfeit experiences, just like counterfeit dollars, does not mean that therefore the real experiences or the real dollars do not exist. Objection number 4. Religious experience is founded on ignorance. The objection goes something like this. Sure, a lot of people think that they have religious experiences. We used to think the world was flat too, but these days we know better. This analogy doesn't work though. There is no logical connection between knowledge of the earth and belief in the supernatural. The objection is correct that we used to have less of an understanding about nature, but the numinous is not derived from nature. We could have believed many stupider things about nature and found them to be untrue, and still that wouldn't affect whether our experience of the numinous, i.e., our religious experiences, are genuine.